All right, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. If you would do me a favor and go ahead and mute your phones or your lines, that would be really helpful. We'll leave some time at the end for questions and try to take care of those, as many of those as you guys have. I want to be really respectful of your time, so I just do want to dive right in, and hopefully this is helpful. This is one of those resources that, if you don't know, I was a reporter here in Tennessee for more than 5 years before I joined TBI about 3 years ago. And so this is one of those resources that every time I come back to, I keep thinking, gosh, I wish I would have known about this type of a resource when I was a reporter, because I honestly had no idea that this amount of data about crime lived online all the time. And I think that there's some interesting applications here, both from a context perspective when you're working on crime stories and also when you're on deadline and just need to find data quickly. So I hope that this is helpful. If you want to ask any questions while I'm going, just pop those up into the chat tab on your screen, and I'll try and address as many of those as we go. And like I said, we'll open it up for questions toward the end if there's anything that you might have big picture for the entire group. So let me first start by saying this, that the data that we're talking about comes to us through a system called the Tennessee Incident-Based Reporting System. So I'm laying a foundation here. And TIBERS is the system that we collect crime data here at TBI, and subsequently we forward that data on to the FBI. It's a very advanced system. It's been in place in the state since the year 2000, and the FBI director has gone so far as to say that our system, the way we do it in Tennessee, should be a model for other states. So I want to show you that on our website, if you just scroll down to the bottom here, and there's a little tab right here that says Law Enforcement Resources. If you just happen to click on that and go into it, this is the area of our website where we have a lot of information for law enforcement agencies that the public really doesn't necessarily care about. But this might be helpful for you at some point. Right here in the section that you see where it says TIBERS, if you click into this, this is all of the information that we currently have for the law enforcement agencies who give us data. And I want to point this out. It lives over here under TIBERS Manuals, Information, and Handouts. If you just click into this, and then the very first thing, this 13th edition TIBERS Data Collection Manual, if you ever have questions about how we get this data, what the definitions look like, that sort of thing, this is where you go to find that. So it's a long document. It goes into a lot of detail. But if you're ever like, hey, what's the definition of homicide in TIBERS? This is where you're going to be able to find that answer. And so it goes into how we got TIBERS, the jurisdictional reporting guidelines, et cetera, and all of that. Bottom line, law enforcement agencies give us a lot of information about criminal incidents, and that includes, you know, the number of offenses, the types of offenses, all sorts of information demographically about the suspect, the victim, the time of day, whether a weapon was used, et cetera, et cetera. So we get an enormous amount of data, and subsequently we turn that around on our website that we call TNCrimeOnline.com, and this is what that website looks like. Again, it's just TNCrimeOnline.com. Now there's a couple of different options here on this site. There's an administrative function over here. This is for the law enforcement agencies. Where you're going to be most interested is right here on the public site, where it reads View Reporting Site. So let's just dive in, and let me kind of show you how this is laid out. This gets a little bit confusing because there's a lot that lives over here. This sort of breaks down in big picture the type of data that we collect. And you can drill down into all of these if you want to. I find that most often reporters care about the stuff that lives right here at the very top, crimes and clearances by offense type. And so when you click into this, you'll note pretty quickly that this gives you an enormous amount of data. So over here we've got all of the different types of fields that we collect that are relevant in this particular aspect. So measures, jurisdiction, offense type, criminal activity, offender using, method of entry, et cetera, et cetera. It just goes on and on from there. So plenty of information, and then the resulting data is over here. So what you're looking at right now, and you can see that it's highlighted here, offense types and incident clearance. Now, let me explain what incident clearance is, because oftentimes that gets confusing, and you'll note when you're looking at the data over here that, you know, there were 420 homicides in 2015, but only 275 of them were cleared. In most instances, cleared means that someone was arrested in connection to that particular incident. That's not always the case, but it is true that in most circumstances, offenses are cleared that particular way. I find that reporters generally don't necessarily care about that aspect, because 9 times out of 10, you guys are working on stories about something happened and I need some context for how much this kind of thing is happening. So clearance really doesn't get at the heart of that particular aspect. I mean, sometimes you might be working on stories of, are police departments solving XYZ types of crimes? Well, that's when clearance is going to matter to you. So I oftentimes suggest that you get rid of the clearance column, and to do that, you just come over here on the left side of your screen. You see this X that lives right next to incident clearance? If you click that, you'll notice that the resulting data on the right side of your screen just takes it away. And so this becomes a little bit easier to use. So now you're looking statewide, and again, this is 2015 data indicated right here. And just to let you know, 2016 data should be made available sometime next month, right about the same time that we publish our Crime in Tennessee report. So what you're going to do is, let's say, for example, you want to know the number of homicides in Gallatin, reported by Gallatin police, over a 5-year time frame, just to give you some kind of context for how big homicide is as an issue in Gallatin. So right now I'm looking at statewide data. I've got way too many offenses, and this just doesn't break it down into what I need. What I can do is I can go into offense type. So again, I just come over to the left side of my screen, see where offense type is, and just click into that. You'll notice on the right side of your screen, we get this nested system of organization, and this is where every single offense that can be reported to TBI lives. They break down into 3 categories. You've got crimes against persons, you've got crimes against property, and you also have crimes against society. And you'll notice that all of these are checked. And if you'll remember, when we were looking at the chart, it had a lot of different offenses. That's because all of these things were checked. Well, I don't want all of this data in this example. So I can get rid of all of this really easily by coming up here, and you'll note you've got these green check marks and you've got these red X's. I can get rid of the entire column, and I want to in this instance because it's more convenient, by just clicking that red X above the entire thing, and you'll note they all go away. And then I said I just want murder, so then I'm just going to click murder. Now the cool thing is that I can come up here to the right side of my screen. See where this says show report? If I just click that, this tells me that in 2015 there were 420 homicides reported in the state of Tennessee. But as I indicated, I want Gallatin. So I can come over here. Again, I'm going to go to the left side of my screen, and I'm going to go into jurisdiction by geography. And again, we collect data from every police department, every sheriff's office, every college or university that has an accredited police force. They're required under Tennessee law to submit data to the TIBRS program. So Gallatin, I know, is in Middle Tennessee. And if I go into Sumner County, see how this is all nested again? So I just went down into Middle, and then I scrolled down, dropped down Sumner, and then I just click Gallatin Police. And then I can go back over here to the right and click Show Report. And this tells me that Gallatin didn't report any murders in 2015. If a square shows up as blank, it's a 0. Now I want a 5-year context here. So I'm going to go over again to the left side of my screen and see where incident date is. If I click into that, I can easily just go checking several different years here: 2011, 2012, 13, 14, and 15. And then in the upper right-hand corner of my screen again, I just come back up to Show Report. And you'll note that what results here is interesting. I've got 0 for 2011, 0 for 2012, 2 for 2013, 1 for 2014, and 0 for 2015. So I don't have a whole lot of data here to work with just because Gallatin doesn't typically have a whole lot of homicides. Let's change this to a jurisdiction that does, just to kind of show you how to do that and also how you can further drill down into the data if you're interested in doing so. So again, back over to the left, jurisdiction by geography, and let's take a look at, say, Memphis Police Department. First, I want to get rid of Gallatin Police because I no longer care about that. And then I'm just going to go into West Tennessee, Shelby County, and then I can just click Memphis Police Department. Now, I want to point something out here. If you want to just take a look at all of Shelby County, if you were to click right there by the county name, that would give you the sum of all of the agencies in Shelby County that report to TBI. So if you're looking at perhaps a more regional approach as opposed to a particular jurisdiction, you can easily find county data by clicking on that county aspect right there. That can sometimes be helpful. So again, I've got Memphis Police, homicide over a 5-year period, and I just go right back up to the right here where it reads Show Report and do that. And you will see that what results here, 117 in 2011, 134 in 2012, 125 in 2013, 2014, 139, and 138 in 2015. So I've got a little bit more data to work with here. Now let's say, you know, it was a gun crime and I want to know about the type of weapon that was used here. Well, we collect that data through TIBERS as well. And the type of weapon field lives over here on the left. So again, all you're doing is just bouncing back from left to right. So doing what you need to do or want to do over here, and then it produces the report over here when you click Show Report. So let's take a look at type of weapon, for example. So I'm just going to click into that type of weapon or force involved. And you'll see this is all the different type of weapons data that we collect from agencies. So under Firearm, I've got a couple of different options here. Say it was a shotgun that was used. And I want to get some context for how often shotgun-related homicides are reported in Memphis. If I click Shotgun and Show Report, you'll see that this doesn't happen very frequently. So this indicates that in 2015, for example, there was only one homicide, one murder reported in which a shotgun was the weapon. Now, if I want to go back over to the left and change that, I just bounce back over to the left, type of weapon, and then you can see here I've got shotgun checked, but let's just say I want to look at handgun or even handgun automatic just to sort of see what those two look like. Again, just click those, Show Report up here on the right-hand corner of the screen, and you'll see that I get handgun 66 and 0 automatic handguns. Now, it's more often that you're going to get, you know, an automatic rifle type situation, so you can just click Rifle Automatic and again, Show Report. And again, those were zeros there by those agencies. And it's important to note the TBI doesn't do anything to calculate or do any sort of math. This is the data as submitted by these respective law enforcement agencies. We don't do anything to manipulate or change or calculate or edit the data in any way. We do audit the data. So we actually send folks from TBI to these respective agencies where they are pulling these reports and looking at the incident reports to make sure that they've been reported to TIBRs appropriately. There's also a whole bunch of quality control things built into the system. So where, for example, if a law enforcement agency sends us a incident and reports to us that I don't know what's a good example. Well, this might be a good example. So we got a law enforcement officer killed or assaulted, but the victim, so the law enforcement officer, was under the age of 7. And obviously that's going to pose a problem. I mean, there are no law enforcement officers who are under the age of 7. So that obviously triggered a quality control issue. We took a look at it, and lo and behold, the law enforcement agency reported to us the death of a canine officer, which, though very sad, is not necessarily reportable to TIBR. So the system is automatically wired to trigger those sorts of things that might be problematic or otherwise something that we need to take a closer look at. I do want to see if I can show you, if we do this. So you can see that I've got handguns and rifles and that sort of stuff in this. Now, something else that might be interesting to you, we oftentimes will get questions about domestic violence, you know, and was there a domestic violence component involved in that? So let me show you how to find that out. That actually lives in a different area. So what you want to do is just go sort of start over again at TNCrimeOnline.com.
Okay.
And then if you click into View Reporting Information, you'll notice that the domestic violence data lives right here under Victim Data. Let me highlight that area right in here. So you can kind of just do the same thing again. You're going into offenses and clearances. And so the thing that you get here, these are offenses that have been reported to TBI as having occurred in which there was a definable domestic violence nexus. So in other words, it's sort of like a flag. The law enforcement agency reports the murder, the kidnapping, the rape, the sodomy, the sexual assault, and then there's this separate flag that indicates this was domestic violence involved. And so you can see that you have the same sort of data. You're able to do the same sort of, you know, adjustment to whatever particular information you're interested in over here. So you could look at, you know, domestic violence related homicides in which a handgun was the weapon if you wanted to drill down that specifically into the data. It just gives you a lot of different options. So domestic violence is something that we oftentimes get a lot of questions about, so I wanted to show that to you as well. There's also information you can see here on DUI arrests that we collect. There's property crimes, drug crimes, a little bit of everything that lives over here. A lot of times we'll get questions about, you know, tell me about where numbers are when it comes to heroin usage, you know, and that sort of thing. Those are sometimes difficult to wrap our heads around, but there is some degree of TIBR's data that's available. So these are drug-related offenses. So, you know, aggravated assault in which a drug was somehow related. The drug data as it exists actually lives down here. Drug-related offenses reported. So it's kind of in this property and drug crime data down here. So drug-related offenses reported. And again, drug-related, et cetera, and I believe, let me check to see here. Just want to look at something really quick. That's not what I'm looking for. You can see the system is so enormous that it takes a lot of time to really get comfortable in trying to figure out what you're looking for. So if you ever have any questions, you're like, I'm trying to find this and I got this far, but I can't quite figure it out, let us know. We have experts next door to our office that we can go try to track down, but we've tried to get as up to speed on this stuff as we can. I want to look here, drug-related offenses, to see if I can find what I'm trying to see here. we actually have a section where you can break down the type of drug. Ah, thank you. So drug offenses by drug type lives right here under property and drug crime data. I just didn't see it for some reason when I was scrolling through. But again, this sort of breaks down all drug and category types, number of drugs reported. So this is where you can actually break down specific drugs just to see how big an issue they actually are. So this is sort of like someone was arrested for possession of, possession or perhaps intent to deliver a particular substance. This is how this would be reported to TIBERS. And again, on the left side of your screen, you've got drug type over here. You can click into that pretty easily. And you're able to see, again, all of these are checked right now, but you can actually break these down into even more specific things. So you can take a look, for example, at heroin and see, so for example, let me do this. I'll just get rid of everything except for heroin real quickly. Just to see, I'm curious, I haven't looked at this lately. So heroin, let's see, incident date, over on the left, and then I'll just click 5 years worth just to sort of get a quick little estimate of what this has done. Yeah, so you can see, for example, heroin incidents went from 258 in 2011 to 1,373 in 2015. I'd say that's a pretty noticeable increase. So, I mean, the more you just kind of get comfortable playing around here and being curious and just seeing what's being reported, you can really find some good stories in this data as reported to us. So, I mean, that seems like a pretty noticeable increase to me, at least, and certainly something that I think would make for a pretty good story, just to sort of see why that's doing that. And again, we don't do any kind of analysis here at TBI that sort of explains why the numbers do what they do. We just turn around this information to the public. So that's, in a nutshell, what the TNCrimeOnline site can do in terms of drilling down into the data and taking a look. Let's go ahead, if anyone wants to unmute and see if there's any question on this aspect. There is one more part of this that I want to show you, and we'll do that in a second. But does anyone have any kind of question right now?
Do you know if that degree bridge middle situation is over?
I think someone's trying to ask a question, but I'm having some difficulty hearing you. Do you want to type it into the chat box?
Are you listening to
I hear him typing, so maybe.
this? Weird. It's nice that it works on the phone, though.
Free water.
While I'm waiting on that, does anyone have any other questions? Okay. If there are none, then what I'll do is, while he's doing that, I want to show you, like, there are oftentimes instances where, as a reporter, you're on deadline and you really just need a quick snapshot of what an agency's crime situation looks like. And so the place to find that on this site, again, TNCrimeOnline.com, just come into it, and what you want to do is click into Agency Crime Summary, which is right here. It lives kind of a little further south on the main page when you land on it. Agency Crime Summary. When you click into this, it pulls up a different kind of system here. So you've got the year, the jurisdiction, you can even break it down into month if you need. But I find that it's oftentimes handy just to sort of point people here and say, oh, you need 2015, the latest public data from every law enforcement agency lives right here. So say you're running out to breaking news and it's in, I don't know, Millersville. 2015 Millersville Police Department, and then in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, if you click Just View Report, you'll note the system pulls all the data together.
back to the hospital.
The data certainly takes its time sometimes. But there you go. Population estimate, 6,700. Total offenses reported, 329. They cleared 54.10%. And then it even gives you sort of a breakdown. They reported, for example, 36 simple assaults, cleared 19 of them, that sort of thing. So this can give you, when you're in a hurry, just a real quick snapshot of a particular agency. And again, you can change the year all the way back to 2001 and get some quick context. It's important to note that when you're looking at this data, we do the same thing that the FBI does in that we encourage folks to not compare one agency to another with this particular data. We don't think that that's necessarily a fair way to do it because it can be a bit apples to oranges. We all know that Millersville, for example, is a lot different than Memphis. So, for example, it really isn't a fair comparison to say, oh, Millersville had 0 murders last year and Memphis had 138. It's apples to oranges. Now, the more appropriate thing you can do is take a look at a particular agency over the span of a number of years, because then you're able to see what went up, what went down, and what does the agency say as for the particular reason. So those are the agency crime summaries, and you're able to print these out as well. You can, even download this into an Excel if you want to do it that way. So it gives you just a lot of good options in terms of trying to quickly get this data as soon as possible. I only wanted to talk for about half an hour, so those are the 2 big things that I wanted to show you guys, kind of this crimes and clearances by offense type, sort of how to get into it and take a look at it. I think you'll find if you start poking around that this data can be really helpful. For example, you can go so far as to say, because we also collect the time that these incidents occur, and we even break it down so you can say if you're a morning reporter and you need to try to figure out how many of this type of crime is reported by this agency from the hours of 12 a.m. till I think it's 2:59 in the morning, or from 3 a.m. to 6 in the morning. You can even break down the data that much. So it gives you a lot of flexibility to sort of customize the data depending on the circumstances that you might be particularly interested in. So again, phones are unmuted. If anybody has any questions, final thoughts, let me know, and I'll try to answer any questions that you guys might have.
I have a question on the agency crime summary.
Yes.
In that top left side, there are 2 rates that are reported for every jurisdiction. One of those is Group A crimes per 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is arrests per 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me that those 2 categories are the 2 categories that are valuable in comparing jurisdictions. That's a correct assumption?
Well, again, the FBI we follow the FBI guidance when it comes to that sort of situation where we don't think that the data submitted by these agencies should ever be used for any kind of comparative work. Now, would a statistician differ? Perhaps. So, I mean, I think that you probably could take a look at those and say, for example, they had this many per 100,000 and this jurisdiction had this many per 100,000. And so to that aspect, I think you probably could do a little bit of comparison. However, again, we would advise against it. It's just sort of our standard response when it comes to this data. We don't think that comparison in that regards is necessarily helpful. I realize that I really didn't answer your question at all, but I see what you're saying as a journalist, that would be, the point that you could perhaps take a look at comparison. But again, our line is that we just would encourage not using this data for comparison.
The other question is, what other possible value would that rate information have than that? Or is that goes back to the FBI again?
I guess it would go back to the FBI. But there and again, I mean, you can take a look at, contextually over a number of years. That's also a benefit of this particular data. So, for example, in 2014, the numbers were obviously different as well. So you can take a look at, the role of population in influencing not just the rate of crime, but also the rate of arrest. So for example, the arrest rate was 5,618.8 in 2004, and I think it was a tad higher in 2015.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, seeing none, half an hour and we're done. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I hope that this was helpful. I hope that this resource helped you guys out. And if you have any questions, just let me know. Thanks.
Thank you.